Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard here to the Sports Talk Nation. Michael Cohen here with you. There's things that are going to be said during this segment that I may end up regretting. The New York Jets find a way to lose their second game of the year. They lose 10-9 to the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos, who, yes, despite being coached by a Hall of Fame head coach in Sean Payton, and despite the obvious fact that Vance Joseph, the defensive coordinator, put together an incredible game plan, and they are a young team that has a very bright future, but they are a young team that has a bright future. This is a Denver Broncos team that was begging to be beaten. Begging. And what did the Jets do? They laid an egg big time against the Denver Broncos as they lose 10-9. Really, this was a game that, as everyone has commented on social media, as we all know, undisciplined, unfocused, poorly coached. 13 penalties? Is that last night? Was that what it was? 13 penalties against the Jets in this game. Most of those penalties were on the offensive side of the ball. A lot of them stupid penalties. False starts. I think it was around 3 or 4 in a row, it felt like, when they were backed up in their own end zone. And before Rodgers could even get a snap off, this guy, John Simpson, jumps off. Breece Hall jumps off. Okay? Olu Fasano jumps off. Everybody was jumping off sides. Tyron Smith, a Pro Bowl offensive lineman, he was jumping off sides. No discipline on this team. None in this game today. And it's a stark contrast of what we saw a week ago against the New England Patriots, where this was a focus group. They were disciplined, and they put forward their best effort of the year up to this point, where they smacked on the Patriots 24-3. But that's why they play these games, because it's a week-to-week league, week-to-week business, as we all know. But this was a game that, if you're the Jets, you're going to be kicking yourselves for losing this kind of game for a very long time. It's a conference game. It's, the way things are going in the AFC, I've said this before. If you watch some of these teams in the AFC, like Buffalo, and yes, I know they're not what they used to be, Kansas City and Baltimore and all the teams we know are good teams, you can't afford slip-ups against bad, questionable teams like Denver. And I don't want to call Denver a bad team, because they're not a bad team. They're they're a young team that's figuring it out. But you can't afford to lose to them. And that's what the Jets did on Sunday. "13 penalties. Not to mention the drops. I mean, you saw Garrett. Here's another thing that really had to bug me on the game on Sunday. Start of the game, Aaron Rodgers hits Garrett Wilson for what would have been a first down, and he fumbles the ball forward. Why wasn't he wearing gloves? Every time you see Garrett Wilson, whether it be playing college or pro, he's always wearing gloves. He never fumbles. But this time, he's not wearing gloves. And I noticed that in the pregame warm-ups, he wasn't wearing gloves. And I saw it was shown on CBS. He had a ball go through his hands, and I'm thinking to myself, uh-oh, this guy's got to put some gloves on. And what happens? He fumbles the ball forward and costs the Jets a possession there. And then another one is Breece Hall. Where was he in this game? 10 carries, 4 yards. Five targets at wide receiver. He only had 2 catches, 14 yards, had a couple of drops. He was invisible in this game. And look, Denver did a good job. They bottled him up. They game planned and schemed against him and his abilities, but he was nowhere on the field. Nowhere. He did absolutely nothing. So if that's the case, if your top running back is having a tough day, why aren't you running Braylon Allen more? Allen had 34 yards on 8 carries. Why isn't he carrying the ball more, especially in short-yarded situations when you need a first down? Why aren't they doing that? I mean, Allen is the guy who's supposed to be able to plow through defenders. And for the most part, when he had the ball in his hands, he was doing that. But you got to feed him the ball a little bit more. Instead of having your quarterback, I don't care if it's Aaron Rodgers or anybody else, drop back 42 times to throw. So that's on the offensive coordinator. That's on Nathaniel Hackett and his game planning. So, like I said, everything was awful in this game for the Jets. Now, fortunately, that Jet defense is fantastic. fantastic. They did a fantastic job on the defensive side of the ball for Gang Green, really throughout the first half as they kept Denver off the scoreboard, but there's only so much you can do when the offense isn't operating great. The Jets gave up only 10 points in this game. You take a look at the individual statistics. It's not like Bo Nix had a great game. He only threw for 60 yards for Denver. That's it. Javonte Williams, yes, he had a couple of big runs for Denver, but only had 77 yards on the ground. They didn't do anything spectacular, Denver, offensively, but they won this game because the Jets couldn't get out of their own way offensively. Offensive line was the huge problem in this game. And I saw the post-game there where Robert Saleh says, well, we got to figure things out. You think you got to figure things out? You think so? You think so? Figure things out. So you can blame Aaron Rodgers. I mean, you can't blame Aaron Rodgers for anything here. I mean, 24 of 42, 225 yards. He did as best as he could, but he was running for his life in that second half. He was sacked 5 times, ended up getting, as he was trying to run forward, got pulled down from behind and landed awkwardly on his left knee. And, of course, he gets up very slowly, is limping, kind of holding the hamstring. Looking like, I don't want to say looking like a 40-year-old guy, but at that point, that's what it looked like. He was hurting in this game because the Jets couldn't do anything on the offensive line against this Denver Bronco defense. And again, look, I don't want to take anything away from Denver in this game because they played great. Their linebacker core, very much underrated. Cody Barton, 10 tackles in this game. Jonathan Cooper, who gave fits to Olu Fasano all day, had a few tackles, but he had a lot of pressures in this one. And, of course, let's not forget John Franklin Myers, who had a sack and was in Rodgers' kitchen all day. Remember John Franklin Myers? Yes, he was on the Jets just a few months ago. Of course, the Jets traded him to Denver in a salary cap move because they wanted to see if they could make the deal happen with Hassan Reddick, a deal that still has not happened. It still hasn't happened. So credit to the Denver Bronco defense, Vance Joseph, the defensive coordinator. Those players, they got a lot of good young players there. That's a good football team. Watch out for them down the road. But it still gives no excuse to the Jets finding a way to be undisciplined, unfocused, and seemingly outcoached in this game on Sunday. And I think a lot of blame goes on the head coach. A lot of blame goes on the offensive coordinator for not being creative enough. And on the head coach for not 10 days you had to get ready for this game. 10 days to harp on saying, don't overlook this team. Don't overlook this team. And sometimes teams need a kick in the ass. Sometimes they do. I have nothing against Robert Saleh personally. I think he's a good guy. He's a good defensive coordinator. As a head coach, unfortunately, now, in a situation where the Jets are in a win-now situation, we're starting to see some of those warts as him as a head coach as far as discipline, team discipline, and focus, especially when you have a Hall of Fame quarterback like you do here with Rodgers. The excuses of having a young quarterback like a Zach Wilson are long out the window. Can't blame the quarterback this time. And that's what needs to happen here for the Jets. Robert Saleh needs to kick ass this week because the Jets are now, and I'll be on my way as well. We're heading over to, show the merch. There it is behind me somewhere. Maybe they can't see it too well. But heading over to, hold on one second. Let me get the merch here. Let's get the merch. We are heading over to London, England, of course, this week. We'll be there for the Jets and the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings, right now, undefeated, as they stand there at 4-0. A huge win for them against the Green Bay Packers. They win by a score. There it is. There you see the merch behind me over my shoulder. As we'll be in London for the big game between the Vikings and the New York Jets. They're 4-0. Sam Darnold, 3 more touchdowns today. And you know what the discussion will be all week? It's going to be, how could the Jets let Sam Darnold go? Sam Darnold looks like an MVP candidate. Sam Darnold is now Peyton Manning reincarnated. He is going to become the greatest quarterback in history of the world. That's what you're going to hear all week. What did the Jets do? Of course, forgetting that Darnold had played with the Carolina Panthers, flamed out, played with the San Francisco 49ers as a backup third-string quarterback, and now he has figured it out. He has finally found a home here at the Minnesota Vikings, and he's taken he's grabbed the bull by the horns and he's run with it. Congratulations to him. It also helps the fact that he has the best receiver in football in Justin Jefferson. But that is the stage that is now set, folks. You have the Jets 2-2 going into London, England, kind of limping a little bit like Rodgers with the hamstring. People are now going to be doubting them going into this game, and that's what if you're Robert Saleh, that's what you should play upon. People will be doubting you going into this game against the Minnesota Vikings. Everyone's going to expect Minnesota to kick your ass in England. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? So this is an opportunity now for the Jets to go in there and beat a team that, let's just be honest, the Vikings are due for a loss, right? They can't keep winning like this every week. They look great right now. We'll see. That's going to be, it's a fascinating game right now coming up here for New York. But for this one, as they drop to 2-2, it's a loss you hate to have. It's a loss that it could come back and bite the Jets in the rear end later on in the year if they're not careful. If this becomes an up and down kind of season, the Jets are 10-7, 9-8, and fighting for a wild card spot. We'll be looking at, hey, remember that game against Denver at the end of September? Oh yeah, I remember that one. Yeah, that could happen. So just keep that in mind. I think we all know that's very, very much possible. So the page now gets turned. It gets turned to Minnesota. It gets turned to the UK. It's must win, I think, in a lot of ways for the Jets at this point. When you're 2-2, you're of course got the Buffalo Bills and the Pittsburgh Steelers. After that game, in the ensuing weeks, both of those games, are in. Think about this: the Jets are basically in prime time the next 3 weeks. In the UK, it's going to be on NFL Network, broadcast all over the place. And then after that, Monday Night Football against Buffalo. The Jets will be finally back in their classic normal uniforms for that game. And then at Pittsburgh on Sunday Night Football the week after that. Wow. Yeah. Primetime! Let's see if the Jets can handle it. Let's see if the Jets can handle it big time in primetime. Speaking of primetime, let's change the subject just a little bit. Let's just change things up. How about those New York Mets? They somehow, like a zombie apocalypse movie, still find ways to survive. They right now are going into Atlanta with a situation where all they have to do is win one game against the Braves on Monday afternoon, and they are in the playoffs. It has been a weird, wacky season all year for the Metropolitans. And this year coming down the stretch with all the injuries they have taken, especially with Francisco Lindor with the back injury. And Lindor played through this game on Sunday afternoon and found a way to hit a home run and played well. And the Mets won 5-0 over the Brewers. Finally, they now control their own destiny, win one game in Atlanta of the two, and they are in the playoffs and most likely would have to go back to Milwaukee the next day to start the wild card series. Is this a team that's going to, go far in the playoffs? Probably not. But it would be nice to see because of the season they've had, the rite of emotion that they've been riding on since June, to see them complete this task and get to the postseason to be good for the franchise moving forward. They set the groundwork very nicely this year. It's been an incredible season with everything that's going on. You talk about the fan engagement, Grimace, OMG, again, play of guys like Francisco Lindor, some of the pitchers that have stood up big time this year. We'll see who ends up sticking around next year. Of course, Doug Peterson has been their best. David Peterson, rather, has been. I'm still in football mode. So sorry about that. David Peterson has been their best pitcher this year, and he'll be a big part of that staff. But what will happen with guys like Quintana and Severino, those are questions down the road. Questions about Alonso. We're going to have a lot to discuss with the Mets coming up in the offseason, but one more win, and they're in the playoffs, and that's something to build off of moving forward towards 2025 for the Metropolitans, unless they want to get greedy and just want to win some games, makes us actually believe in something else. So we'll see what happens, folks. Leave your thoughts below. Looks like both teams are going to be making the playoffs for the Yankees and the Mets. The Jets on their way to London, England, licking their wounds from a bad day in Kent's Denver. We'll talk to you next time.